Taking people photos in suboptimal lighting results in photos that are sometimes less than desirable. But don't throw those images away just yet. If you have any portrait images taken with an on-camera flash, or perhaps the lighting or the background is a little bit dull, then this is the video tutorial for you. Hi, I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, and in this video you'll see a complete transformation of this image from before to after. You'll learn which tools to use in Luminar Neo to create this stunning black and white effect. So if you're ready, let's get started. Okay, so Holly sent me some great images. I want to use Holly's as an example. So there's a couple of different things. So you mentioned that you wanted the background changed. Was it the background on this one that you didn't like? Because I don't mind this background actually, Holly. And I'm allowed to talk about it, but we're not allowed to show it yet because the new Gen Swap is coming to Luminar very soon. Or sorry, the new Gen Expand is coming. And this one actually would be a perfect example of when to use Gen Expand because I'd like a little bit more space above her head. So when Gen Expand comes out, Holly, give this one a try and give her a little bit more space. So that's one thing that I do talk about. She's a little bit more off to the side than I would like, and I would like a little more space on her head. Now, if we don't have Gen Expand, I can deal with that another way. We can actually crop in a little bit more, okay? So let's do a crop before we actually start doing any editing on this one, okay? So if I'm not happy with how it's cropped, I'm going to keep the original aspect ratio, okay? But I'm going to come in a little bit on her head, okay? So if you don't have space above, come in a little bit more, okay? Now I'm going to come in a little on the bottom so that I can get her face more around this third mark, okay? So I don't want so much arms, and I'm going to put her ever so slightly more closer to the center, but not quite. Okay. One other thing to think about when you're doing portraits, again, this is kind of photography / photo editing tips today, is the position of the body. Okay, so her face is face onto the camera, and so is her body, right? So to make somebody a little bit slimmer, okay, so watch my shoulders. Look how wide my shoulders are. Okay, if I turn sideways, see how much slimmer? If I turn away from the light, okay, now I'm in shadow on the chest area, which is also slimming. And if you turn the face slightly away, it's slimming on the face too. Okay. Now she doesn't have a problem with, needing her face to be slimmer, but definitely on the shoulders with girls, you want to turn their shoulders 30 to 45 degrees away from the camera either way, and then have their face come back towards the camera. So on this one, right, now this is one where I would probably do something like this to tilt a little bit to lower that shoulder. Right. I'm going to come in not quite so much. I want a little bit more of her head. So I've tilted too much. There we go. I would probably tilt this one to lower the shoulders, right? But it's going to throw off the lines in the background, okay? So I'm going to keep it straight in this case. And I'm using the verticals to try and, I think she had it straight. Does that look straight? There we go. I'm using the verticals here. Okay, so come in a little bit on the head. So you don't want to crop like this, right? You don't want to crop just touching the head because then it just feels crowded, right? You want to come part way in if you're going to crop, right? So for me, this is a much stronger composition. I still want her a little bit more centered, like so. There we go. Okay, so now we can start to do some editing. The other thing I want to show you is I've been developing, and these are coming, some black and white portrait presets for Luminar. And I will get you some to test, Holly, but I think this one actually might be a really good one. Okay, so this image, because the background is kind of, like you said, uninteresting, what if we just make it about her? Okay, so we don't even need to change the background. It's nice and soft, it's in the shadow. What if we just do some editing to minimize that? And we can use portrait bokeh to blur the background and darken it even more so she stands out. But let's take a look at some of the black and white presets that I've designed. Okay, so I've got one called Golden Glow. And look what that does. She's a little bit dark, but that's editable, right? And when you apply a preset, you can actually dial it down, okay? So this one is a soft black and white. So it's more like the blacks are not really deep black. Not so much on the antique grunge. Okay, gritty is more for something where you want to bring out character of people and brings out texture. That's not what we want. This one's kind of neat on this one, light matte. Grainy for more of a film, like an old film look. This one works well for her. So bright glamour, bright and light glamour. Right? This one I created to blur the edges of the background a little bit. And I believe I am using portrait bokeh on this one. Right? So that's wine and gold. And this one is blue and gold. Right? Which one do you guys like here? Because I think we could start with one of these and do something really nice. I kind of like the golden one on her. And then I'm just going to lighten it. So I'm going to apply golden, okay? And then you see you get the slider. So after you apply the preset, you can actually dial it down a bit. So if it's too dark, I can literally just lower it. Or once I've applied it, I can leave it fully applied and just go and edit each of the individual things, okay? So overall, she's a little bit dark. So what I'm going to do is go all the way back to the bottom and go to develop, okay? Because I know that I am adding contrast here, okay? Yes, I did. So I did a big curve to add a lot of contrast here. And I think I'm just going to lift it a little bit so it's not quite so dark, like so. Okay. And then I'm just going to follow along with each of these steps here and just sort of tweak them as necessary. Okay, so I've got face light here. Okay, now I did change the eye color. Okay, and here's a little trick for black and white. If you want the eyes to really pop in black and white, you could change the eye color here because it doesn't matter that her eyes aren't that true color, okay? Because look at the detail and the texture in the eyes, okay? And I've chosen gray, and it comes out really great in black and white, okay? So that's what I've chosen there. So we can check all of the settings. Do we want more eyebrow darkening? Maybe lips are too dark. Maybe teeth are too white. Okay, now keep in mind that lip darkness and redness is only going to apply how it's going to come out in black and white. So if I want darker lips for more drama, I can darken them even more. Skin. Okay, so I'm using all the tools here to soften the skin. She doesn't need a lot of that. And then portrait bokeh. Okay, so I'm using the portrait bokeh. Give it a minute to pop in to blur that background even more. Okay, so the selection of her is pretty good. Usually what I do is I'll take the focus masking brush, the brush control, and go to sharpness 50% and then make a big brush and just go around the edge. So can you see? Oops, you can't see because I'm on the screen. Let me put myself over here. So see where I put the brush, okay? So that the one circle is on the edge of her arm and the outer circle is outside her. So I'm going to do that all the way around the edge so that the inner circle is on the edge of her. And I'm just picking up, see, I'm missing some of her hair, okay? I'm just picking up a little bit of sharpness around her so it blends a little bit nicer, okay? And this edge control will help as well, okay? I'm going to bring depth correction down to the left. So that's going to actually increase the blur. So it's bringing the blur closer to her. And I'm going to blur it even more. So look at how crazy we can go with the blur. We can literally make it completely nondescript. We don't even know what that background is anymore. Okay? Like so. Okay? Another little trick is if we change the color of the background to make it more blue, Then when we do the black and white conversion, we can actually darken the background and control the color of the background separately, right? Because we've made it a blue tint. And when you go to black and white conversion, I'll show you that. I'll show you how we can affect that, okay? I use the color harmony tool, okay? And this one is just brightening her and giving her a little bit more contrast, okay? So where you put this hue slider, okay, so it's brightening oranges and darkening blues, okay? So again, it's doing the same thing, brightening her, darkening the background. Now when we go to black and white, right, now we have all of these options. So you can see how, because the background is blue, look at what control this has, okay? So I'm going to darken the background. This is also brightening her, right? I've got red turned down. Be careful with red because you see how much red there is in the face. So even though it does a great job on the lips, it's not doing so much on the face. So be very careful of this one, especially if people have blemishes, because if they have blemishes, it'll make them darker. Okay? So I'm actually going to brighten that one a little bit. Okay, magenta, look at magenta picks up the lips without affecting the skin so much, and it darkens her sweater a little bit. Okay? So that's pretty good. Right? Then I use the high key tool, adds a little bit more contrast, because remember, this is a high contrast type of portrait. And then I've added a vignette. Okay, so it's off center because we cropped. So remember, when you crop, it does not reposition and it does not affect the position of the vignette. So we need to fix that. Okay, so I want to keep her face in the center of this oval because I do want to darken the sweater a little bit. So let's do something like that. Okay, so I turn the feather down to 0 so we can see where it is. This works in Lightroom as well. And then when I turn it back up to a high number, it just softens the vignette, okay, so we can see where it's applying. And now it's soft. So you don't want to make vignettes that look like this, okay? So this is in the what you don't want to do, okay? Keep your edge softer so that you don't see it. It fades really gradually, okay? Then I used an Orton effect to add some glow, and I really like what it does on skin, on portraits. So I apply it to almost every portrait, and I'm going to take it a little bit higher, maybe up to 35 on her, so more of a glamour kind of look. Okay, so let's see what this one is doing. See, it's taking more of that smoothness. I don't know why it's doing that square when I do the before, but it's doing a really nice thing on her skin as well. Right? And then this is how I applied the gold tone. Right? Now, if I don't want it so much, right, it's a little bit too gold, all I have to do is dial it back. Right? Shadows, I've applied a hue of 50, and highlights, a slightly more orange one. Okay, so I've got two different tones. Let's go a little bit more yellow in the highlights as well. Okay, so there's our before and after. So if we want to do blue instead, that's really easy because I'm still in the toning tool. All I need to do is change it to blue on the shadows. Okay, and I could increase the shadow saturation a little bit more. And then keep the highlights. So sometimes I'll turn the saturation up just to see, the color really well. So there's gold highlights and blue shadows. Something like that. So if you like that, better. And that really makes her hair look good, right? That's really cool. So there's our before and after, okay? But see how the changing the eye color, right, brings out more of the iris, right? Totally different look, right? Now, if we want to apply this on the other one, right, let's see what happens here because we did two different images, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the adjustments. So you can right click and do that, or you can just choose Command or Control C. And then let's go paste it into this image. Okay. So again, right click, adjustments, or Command Control V. Now we might get some different effects on this one, and we'll see how the background comes out. Oh, that's interesting. She got a square on her face. Blurring the background has definitely helped. Where are we getting this square from? I find that sometimes the bokeh tool does this. Let me see if I can solve this problem. Okay, there we go. It's got almost too much contrast here. Okay, so all I'm going to do is going to do some adjustments on this, because on this one, I do not want to increase the contrast. I want to decrease the contrast. Okay, so I'm going to bring the highlights down. That looks a little better. And then just double check all of our face edits. Portrait bokeh. Okay, so this one, okay, again, we made it blue. Okay, and I'm probably going to crop this one also. I haven't done that yet. Okay, color harmony is adding contrast, remember, to the face, and it's applying to the background as well. So I don't want it on the background. So this one, I'm just going to do Mask AI and just apply it to the human. I'll do one of yours next, Marty. Okay, so Mask AI does not use the internet, right? And all I'm doing is masking it to human. So it's just analyzing the image. That's why it takes that while. Okay, so now I've masked it to just her. So it's not affecting or adding more contrast to the background. Okay. Now this one, black and white mix, right? She's gone a little flat on this one. So I might, before I do the black and white, I might actually do some other color adjustments. But let's see if this one fixes. Okay, so again, this is adding contrast. So I don't want it anywhere except her. Again, so I just want to add contrast to her, not to the background. Okay. We've got our edge vignette. This one's a little too dark. Now, because we haven't cropped, right, we can see where the vignette is. This one, I don't need to make so small. And let's do something more like this. Okay, because I need to darken that tree over here and not so much. Let's go something like that. Okay. The glow, again, it's affecting the background and really adding contrast to the background. So again, I don't want it on the background as much. So I'm just going to keep it on her. So everything I'm doing is minimizing contrast on the background. Can you see that? Right? And then there's our toning. This one, I think I liked warmer. Let's go warmer because she's in the sun, right? So I think warmer. Let's just do what this is what I call a chocolate brown. So it's got sort of an orange tone in the shadows, and then I keep the highlights almost pure white or clean, right? But I'm going to do one more thing with the background here and crop this image. So let's crop it. And let's see what Luminar thinks is a good crop. So I'm using the crop AI. Okay, so it is coming in. Again, leave a bit more space above her head. So in this one, you've got placed below the elbows. Okay, so for a head and shoulders kind of portrait, crop above the elbow. Okay, so you don't want to go mid-arm and leave her a little bit more space above her head. Okay, so I'm going to, this one, I am going to tilt. Okay, so I'm going to tilt her and see how it comes into her head a little bit. I'm okay with that. We're going to come a little bit more, get her off center. Maybe she's not quite where I want her. Yeah, a little more off center. There we go. Now I'm going to go and use the blur tool. Okay, so I recently just did some funky things with some images that I created last year. So I'm going to do blur twisted, and I'm going to place the blur right about here. Right about here. Okay, and I'm going to create the angle, twisted or motion. I haven't decided yet. This one, I'm going to mask human, but then we'll switch it. So I want this on the background, okay? So I just need to invert it and then copy it. Okay, so see what's happening in the background. I haven't decided yet if I want to use twisted. Yeah, let's use a zoom. So when you leave twisted at 0, it basically zooms, okay? And I've put the center, let's put the center, I'm going to put it right on her hair so I can find it again, because I'm going to apply this one again. So I've copied the mask, right? And then I'm going to apply it again. Let's do twisted, paste the mask in, and then I need to place the blur center. Right. Okay, so see how it's just kind of solving this issue of this background. Now we've got something completely different, right, without changing the background. And we certainly could change the background, right, if we want to do that. Okay, so let's go to the layer properties. This is a tool that I haven't demonstrated recently. So originally, Holly said, can we change the background? So we would do that using portrait background, right? You do need to I think this is an extension. Is this an extension? Yeah, I believe so, right? Okay, so then we just need to refine it. Okay, so refinements brush. I'm going to tell it that this is part of the background. So I'm just coming a little bit closer to her. And usually what I do is I'll come in a little bit and I'll just sort of refine the object to make sure that it's getting all the pieces I want. So there's no transparent parts, like her face is missing. And then I'll use the transition brush and go around the edge. Okay, so transition is what you're telling Luminar, this is the edge of my subject. Okay, so it's going to do a better job searching. Okay, so I kind of indicate the background with blue. Okay, the background is painted in with blue, like so. And then one pass of the transition brush over here. It does a really good job on hair, okay, so that the hair is nice and transparent. But you can also clean up messy hairs with it too, okay? Let's come the object. So these messy hairs here, if I want to literally get rid of them, well, I can just say, well, this is all background, okay? So I can tell it, I want to get rid of those and blur these parts or remove those parts. Right? So I can get rid of the messy hairs. So I'm telling it, hopefully, I'm telling it this part outside is background. Right? Then when I do the transition, get a little smaller brush, it will get rid of a lot of those stray hairs. If we want to check it and see how it's looking, I usually just run the transition brush all the way around the edge because it does a good job of finding the edge, except there where it didn't. Okay, so I'm just going to tell it that's the background. There we go. If you want to see how we're doing, just close this refinement tool. Okay, now I can see that I've got a little bit of the background still here. Okay, so I can go back here. Okay, turn the refinement brush back on. I've still got some background showing up here, so I'm going to minimize that. Just refine it a little bit. My mouse is waiting to catch up, and I noticed up here by her head. Okay, so we've got a little bit more up here that's background. So you're painting in the background, but you don't have to be precise, okay? So see how it's clicking in? You don't have to be precise. You just have to tell it, look, this is background, or I want this to be background. And then when I go transition, I can say this is the edge of the subject here, okay? So it pops to that edge. See that? Now let's try it again. That looks like a pretty good cutout. Okay, so now when I go back to properties, it's going to apply that mask. Now we have her cut out on a transparent background, and we can add a background. Okay, so adding a background, what you want to add, is very specific. We could add something like a texture. We could put her into a scene, right? But it has to be appropriate. I think I've got one that's kind of neat. I've got a brick wall. Let me see if the brick wall works. Where is it? Where's my brick wall? It's taking a minute for my images to load here. We could put her in space. I put myself in space. We could put her in space. We could do a bokeh background. Now keep in mind that if we add a colored background, there's the wall. If we add a colored background, she's black and white, right? So we would need to apply the same toning to the background to make it match, right? If your subject has long hair, is there any rule that you want to see all of the length of hair? Not necessarily, but you'll notice that I didn't crop to the edge here. It's kind of like fingers, right? It's kind of like fingers. Like you don't want to cut the ends of the fingers off. You don't want to cut the ends of the hair off either. Okay. Okay, so now we've got our background image. I'm going to make it fully opaque. And then, of course, it's above her. So we just need to change the order of the layers. So I'm going to drag this down. And now it's behind her. Okay. So again, like I mentioned, few things here. We need to make it black and white to match. Okay. So we can do that. Let's convert it to black and white. And if I want, more contrast, we can darken the reds and brighten the yellows, or darken the whole thing. It darkens like so. Now we need to know the toning. So all I'm going to do is go back up to her layer and go to the toning tool because I want to get the numbers here. So I've got hue 36 on shadows and 46 on highlights. So somebody remember that. 36 on shadows, 46 on highlights. So I'm going to go to toning. Drag my saturation up. I said 36 here, right? 36 on shadows and 46 on highlights, roughly, right? So that's giving us a similar tone, and then I could just match it visually, right? But the other thing that I want to do on a background, obviously, is to blur it a little bit, right? So I'm literally going to use the new blur tool, Gaussian blur. We can just blur it. And I think it should be darker. So I'm going to use develop and just darken the background. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you're darkening the background, drag the blacks down, not just exposure. Okay. So look at how that darkens and adds that contrast that we're looking for. Okay. And I can also add a vignette on the background. Okay. So we're getting close now. Okay, so there's our before and after. Completely different, right? Right, so let's take a look at those. Right, so we've got some really nice before and afters happening here. Two totally different effects, right? I really like black and white portraits. I think there's something timeless about them, right? So that's why I'm making the presets. So I will get those to you to give them a test. Holly said she's going to test for me. If you'd like to learn how to use all the regular tools, check out Luminar Neo, the complete course now. You get step-by-step instructions and my raw files to practice with. You can also watch another video here on YouTube. Just click one on the screen now. Until next time, take care and have fun playing with the AI technology.